My apologies. So please, Hector, I'll let you please begin. We begin class, if you're not familiar, if you haven't been to classes before, we begin class with some opening prayers and chants. Excuse me, taking refuge in wisdom and compassion and virtue through jewels, and offering an ideal universe in the form of a mandala to the holy beings of the past to teach. So it's a traditional way to begin classes. So we do it in Tibet, traditional. It's the only traditional thing we do. So.
So she forgives she metal tram real she in the body Sangye shindu mite buagi Dropin namda shinla jipasho Hiram Guru Ratna Mandala Kamninyatayami Sangye Jidam Zaki Chognam Nam Jamshu Bardu Dakni Gyasuchi Daki Chinyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Panjir Sangye Tripasho Sangye Chidam Zaki Chognam Ka Jamshu Bardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Chinyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Panjir Sangye Tripasho Sangye Chidam Zaki Chognam Jamshu Bardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Chinyen Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Panjir Sangye Tripasho.
So we begin class with a few moments of meditation to help the mind transition from the busyness of the day and all of its prior thoughts and engagements. And breathing meditation is very useful for that and very helpful for that. So we'll simply watch the breath as it passes through the nostrils for a count of 7. Please be aware of how you're sitting. Be aware of your spine. Check to see that it's straight, comfortable, that your torso is in one plane. You can place your hands, left hand under right, eyes barely open or gently closed, breathing through the nostrils. You're aware of the rounds of your breath. One exhalation and one inhalation is one round of breathing. Bring your awareness to the tips of your nostrils and tune into the sensation there. Let that sensation fill your awareness. And begin counting 7 rounds, keeping your mind there. If your mind is drawn off to any other thoughts or sounds, bring it back and start again at 1. Now bring your awareness to those beings around you. Don't think about them, just be aware of them. Don't form any ideas or concepts. Be aware that you are in a room full of people. You don't know much anything about any of these people. They could be anyone. We have a little bit of information perhaps about some of them. Some clues, some ideas that we assemble into our definition of them. Release all those thoughts and ideas and just have raw awareness of their being here with you, free of any definition, term, or name. It's possible they are holy beings. They could be anyone. Acting out play. In their enlightenment, their omniscience. Think about how the people around you could be putting you on completely holy and pure, and doing exactly what you need for your benefit to learn and progress, to clean up your negativities and afflictions, to point them out to you and show them to you so that you can clean them and become pure yourself. Feel some conviction in your heart that these are in fact not ordinary beings, that there is something very special about them, that they are in fact great saints and great holy beings here manifesting to bring about an effect and a result for you. Oh, thank you for coming, holy beings, and may we always see you as such. Thank you to everyone who's helped with putting class together. Thank you, G, for the beautiful flyer advertising diamonds for everyone who came tonight. No, sorry. Thank you, Jeremy and Yor, for helping to arrange childcare. It's more and more difficult for me to take time away from the family and prepare class. So, and also it's just very necessary for this class to do this. So, thank you all for pitching in so that I can both prepare class and give the time that I spend here back to my family on another night. So normally we have binders and readings and homework, so we decided to be eco-friendly, right? Green. But I'm a little concerned, I get a little concerned that people won't actually look at the readings, you know, and they won't actually do the readings and won't actually print out the homework and do the meditation assignments on the homework. So is there anyone who does not know the website address to get that material?
The ACI one isn't working through the 3 jewels, so it would have to be your website.
ACI Dharma. I was working the other day when I looked at it.
I'll put it up on the board.
Yeah, if you don't mind. We can try it. It should be working. If it's not, please let us know. Like I said, we have to make other arrangements.
I just did it yesterday.
It was working?
It was working?
ACI Dharma.
It
Alright,
was
so
working?
temporary glitch.
And I just downloaded it today.
Never mind.
All karma is personal.
It is. Sure is.
So, does anyone have a piece of paper we can pass around to create an email list?
Yeah, you can use this.
Typically, we'll have class every week. It is possible something will come up and we'll have to cancel it. I'd like to be able to be in touch with you to let you know that class has been rescheduled. So, would you mind write my email up, Paul, as well?
Yeah, we'll have to remind you.
Roger, So if you
Oh no, ACI Dharma.
ACI
It looks like acid Arma.
Acid Arma? No.
That's what she was asking. Acid.
Acid tripping website, no. So if you need to be in touch with me, please do. Please don't be shy. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to hash out or have more information about, that's my email address. Please do put your email address down if you'd like to be informed if there are any changes in class. Right? And we don't sell it or otherwise do anything with it. Right? The general format for the series is that there's a reading associated with each class, and there's a homework associated with each class, and a quiz associated with each class. You do not have to do them, but if you would really like to learn the material, you should do them. The more you do, obviously, the more you learn, the more deeply you learn. Although it's not a requirement. So, Maria, you still kindly volunteering?
Absolutely.
Shouldn't presume, right?
Absolutely.
Maria is very kindly collecting homeworks and quizzes and grading them and keeping records. If you do complete the materials for the course, then you get a completion certificate from ACI. There will be a reading for tonight's class and a homework associated with tonight's class. On the homework is a meditation assignment, which is very important to do every day. And then when we come into class next week, we'll have quiz 1 on the material from tonight's class. Okay. And we have 12 classes in the series, 10 classes which have the material, 1 review class, and 1 exam class for the 12 classes total. All right. Anything I'm forgetting? Snacks? Don't forget the snacks. We have a break in the middle of class, and encourage everyone to bring some snacks and libation for you and your fellow practitioners and holy beings to snack and chat at the break and relax and unwind a little bit. And so it's all you. Whatever you bring is what you will have, what your friends will have, and your Dharma friends will have, your Dharma family will have. Okay. So as far as me teaching, my job and my responsibility is to pass the lineage on to you as I've received it, to the best of my understanding and to the best of my ability. And your job is to question what I'm saying and evaluate it and make sure that I'm not making up things which are irrational and useless. Right? It's important to make a distinction between what the scriptures say and what's in the canon of the Kangyur and the Tengyur versus my personal opinion. So any teacher who's teaching well should be clearly distinguishing between what they think and what the masters of the past have said, whether it be the Buddha or other great saints and sages and holy beings of the past, right? So these courses are taught according to the scriptures of the monastery, of Tibetan Buddhist monasteries, Saramay particularly, and we reference the books, the books of the original commentary literature of Shakyamuni Buddha and the great saints and commentators of ancient India and Tibet that followed after them. Okay. Any questions? No? Good? Okay. So this is the third in a 3-part series on the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. That book is not actually even taught in the monastery as part of the curriculum there. Excuse me. We've gone through the first 8 chapters. There are 10 chapters. In this course we'll be doing the 9th and 10th chapter. Typically in the monasteries, the students will make arrangements to study this book on their own, on the side. It's one of the most important books of Buddhism, and one of the greatest books of Buddhism, but it's not considered one of the 5 main books, and so it's not sort of the standard curriculum. The 9th chapter is the most important chapter in the book, and it's very difficult to find a teaching on it, very difficult to get a good teaching on it, very rare to hear an explication of the 9th chapter. So it's, excuse me, very few people ever get to hear the 9th chapter, even in the monasteries, and they take a very long time to study the earlier chapters. And I don't know if you recall even the story from when Master Shantideva was originally teaching the 9th chapter. He taught the first 8 chapters, and as he began to teach the 9th chapter, he began to disappear. He floated into the sky and became harder and harder to hear, and only those people with clairaudience and clairsentience who could read his mind and hear great distances could hear the 9th and 10th chapter. So very, very, very rare, very precious opportunity, very great honor to be able to hear it. This chapter is about emptiness. I don't think I can levitate and fly away, but one never knows. It depends on our virtue. From a Buddhist perspective, and I think from a life perspective, as we get older and we look back upon our lives and we question, we say, what did I do with my life that was important? What did I do with my life that was meaningful and valuable? As we get older and we look back, we have a very different perspective and frame of reference about what's meaningful and what's important and what's not. From a Buddhist perspective, there are only very few key important moments in a human life. One of them is having a direct experience of emptiness. And one can take decades to prepare, to study and to meditate and to prepare to have a direct experience of emptiness. And when it happens, it's relatively brief, 20 minutes or whatever. That's one seminal moment in one's life and career. Another is the direct realization of bodhicitta in one's heart, and that takes even less time. It might only be 5 minutes to have a direct experience of real bodhicitta. That's another seminal moment in one's existence. And then, of course, realizations of Dzogchen, Gyrim, Tantric path are other seminal experiences in human life. Dzogchen experiences realizations of experiences may last a few minutes, and Gyrim may last a little longer. But these are really the 4 main classes of meaningful experiences in human life from a Buddhist perspective. Everything else is not important. It's logistical support to get those things. And at the end of one's life, when one is 70 or 80 years old and one looks back and has opportunity, if one has opportunity to review one's life, they find that it was all pretty much transient. You die, it's gone, it's done. It doesn't last. You don't take it with you. It didn't provide anything of meaningful, significant value. These experiences, these 4 key experiences, are of critical and seminal value in human life, and they are worth a lifetime of effort and a lifetime of study and practice to attain them. So, if these are the only things that happen in your life, you'll have had a very meaningful life. If any of these things happen in your life, you'll have had a very meaningful life and a very well-fulfilled life. The purpose of life from a Buddhist perspective is to put our time and our energy and our resources into attaining these things. All of life is about achieving these things. And from a Buddhist perspective, the goal is to design our life and structure our life and live our lives so that we can have these experiences and have these realizations which will have a profound and infinite experience upon us. So, our lives are directed at trying to get these few minutes of experience, right? And why? Why spend an entire life to to get a few brief experiences, right? I mean, we could argue that we spend our entire life trying to get a few brief experiences of sexual pleasure, or maybe it's more than a few brief experiences, I don't know. But, we spend our entire life doing something, right? None of it lasts, and none of it can be taken with us. None of it profoundly changes us on a very deep spiritual level. So, if we have these experiences, we won't suffer anymore, simply said. We go through life from suffering to suffering, from problem to problem, from affliction to affliction, whether it's anger, or jealousy, or insecurity, or not having the things we want, or whatever, there are 84,000 mental afflictions, right? So the only way to end our suffering is through these experiences. And so these experiences are seminal spiritual experiences because they are the direct cause to the end of our suffering. They are the things which will directly and definitively bring about the end of our suffering. If we have a direct experience of emptiness, then we see our future lives, we see our enlightenment, we meet Buddhas. We know that we won't suffer in any meaningful way ever again in the future. So there are no more major sufferings. So minor problems, right? If we have Kairim or Zagrim experiences of a meaningful nature, then we know that we'll become enlightened in this very lifetime, and we'll attain a paradise, a complete paradise in this very lifetime before we die. So these are very deep and profound things. According to Buddhism, we have existed infinitely, forever, and we will exist infinitely. And it's all suffering of one sort or another, lesser or greater degrees. And paradise is possible, enlightenment is possible. There's a path to get there, a method to get there. And these ideas that we're going to be talking about, that we have talked about, and we're going to be talking about, of attaining bodhicitta, perceiving ultimate reality or emptiness, these are the immediate and direct cause for attaining paradise and enlightenment. And without them, it's not possible to become enlightened. It's not. So, life is logistical support to have these key few spiritual experiences, and that's it. And if we're not living that way, we should really look at it and reevaluate. So, the reason for the 9th chapter is to try to teach us to see emptiness directly. The purpose of the 9th chapter and the goal of the 9th chapter is to try to teach us to see emptiness directly. Emptiness is another name for higher reality, ultimate reality, another level of reality which is different from this one, beyond this one, which is the ultimate nature of existence. And so we'll talk about it more. If we can make contact with that other reality, if we can have a direct experience of that other reality, then it changes us in a very deep and profound way, such that we become a completely different type of being. Your very nature as a being has changed. You're no longer considered an ordinary being on a spiritual level. You become a superior being, Arya, a higher being. So, it's a very important and very profound topic, a very difficult topic at times. This is a very deep chapter. And so it's important that the energy of the class is maintained, the seriousness of the class is maintained. So, if you don't take the material seriously, and you don't have the serious aspiration, then it's best not to come. We have to maintain a certain energy, we have to maintain a certain focus and a certain depth of intensity and understanding for this to really impact you. And so if you think you're going to miss more than 2 classes, best to just not come. If you try not to miss any classes. If you do, then just don't come, because we won't be able to maintain a certain level of energy that we need to maintain. A certain level of commitment is needed, and if we are not able to commit to coming to the classes, especially on this deep and holy and profound topic, then then there isn't an appreciation, and there isn't we're not getting it, and it's best to just take a pass and not come. There are certain things in life which come along which present a very special opportunity, and they don't come along in life very often. And it's like when one of these very precious and rare things comes near you in your life, it's important to grab hold of it and go for it, and take it seriously, and not be flip about it, and not let the opportunity pass. There's things that come along which you just cancel everything and do them. And if it's a dharma thing, if it's a virtuous thing, it doesn't matter. It's not as important, it's not as high. This is the essence and key to your permanent end of suffering for all infinite time. Don't take it lightly and don't skip it. So grab the opportunity. And in my own life, I remember when I used to run the retreat center in Connecticut, Godstill, Lama Sopa Rinpoche he came to do a fire puja. He's a high Lama, very esteemed and sought after Lama. And we were running the retreat center, and his attendant had said, well, Lama Sopa Rinpoche has finished one of his tantric retreats, and he needs a place to do fire puja, and he's going to do a 10,000 torma fire puja offering or something like that. And hundreds of, so we need to build a fire, and we need to make, I don't remember how many it was, 1,000 or 10,000 tormas or something or another. And and then we'll have a puja, and he'll offer the tormas to the fire, and this is a ritual, high ritual practice. And I remember, they bought long sheets of plastics, and they covered the entire Gompa meditation hall floor with plastic, and they made, I don't know how many thousands. They bought hundreds of pounds of barley flour and had 8 burners on the stove going, roasting it night and day, and and people making these. Essentially roasted barley flour tormas, and making these tormas, and there are rows upon rows of them lining the floor, and then it was time for Lama Sopa to do the puja. Very high energy, very powerful, and I was helping, and there were many of us helping, and it was time for him to do the puja, and then he started, of course, and I went and I had him working, and I was living in Connecticut and working in the city, and so he started all night doing the puja, all night long doing the puja, first night, all night long. So I went through the whole night doing the puja with him, and then the next day I was like, okay, let's keep going. And I went like, wow, it's going to work. And I come back, and it's still going. It's like, okay, we're going to go all night tonight. And I was just like, should I do this or should I sleep? I was like, I don't know, 2 nights without sleep, you got to work. And so I went to sleep. I wait till, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning or something, and I went to sleep, right? And the next morning, I was kind of like looking at me like pretty crazy. And everybody that was at the puja was like, oh my God, it was amazing, it was incredible, the energy, the vibe, I was flying all night, I wasn't tired at all. I was like flying for days, and it's just, in a way, it's just a light example, but in a way it's not. I'll never in my lifetime do another puja with Lama Sopa Rinpoche, I think. And and whatever that energy was, and whatever that experience was, and whatever was going on then was really a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I've had other experiences in my life where very special things have happened, or very special opportunities arose, and I was just like, you know what? It doesn't quite work for me right now. I got other things that, it's not quite. Maybe whatever. I won't. And so. It took perhaps 10 years to have another opportunity again. Perhaps the opportunity didn't come again. So I would strongly encourage you, both from scriptural authority and from personal experience, not to pass up certain precious opportunities when they arise, and to be clear about your priorities, and to not take it lightly, and to really go for it. Okay. So we need to talk about what does seeing emptiness do for you? And Master Shantideva begins the chapter with his definition of emptiness. So the 9th chapter is hard. You have to work a little bit. There's more Tibetan, even though I don't. Anyway, there's more Tibetan. These classes won't last forever. They'll be over soon. This is course number 12 already. I won't be teaching course 13. I've asked someone else to do it in my stead. So you'll have a very holy, precious guest teacher doing course 13. I expect we'll go through course 15 or 18, I don't know, but I won't be teaching this series again. If we're fortunate, we can supplicate Hector and Maria and whomever else might be qualified to can carry on the sutra lineage and the sutra teachings. So I know from my perspective, Holy Geshe Michael's teachings, sutra teachings and tantric teachings came to an end in their form which he presented them. Holy Ken Rinpoche's precious tantric teachings of 30 years came to an end. It all comes to an end. So consider it a precious opportunity and leap on it while you can. So we're very lucky right now. We have a place, thanks to Allison and the other people at the Three Jewels, and we haven't died yet. So you gotta go for it. Okay, please say Dun,
Dun,
Gangshik,
Gangshik,
Nun Tsundu,
Nun Tsundu,
Tokpe,
Tokpe,
Drima,
Drima,
Separjepa.
Separjepa.
So Dun means that object. Gangshik means which. Nungsundu means directly, to realize it or perceive it directly. Tokpe, I apologize, Tokpe means to realize it or perceive it. So to realize it or perceive it directly. Drima means impurity. Impurity. And what is an impurity? What would be an impurity? Be an example of impurity. What's on your Swiffer? No.
Grasping at an appearance, taking it as real.
You know, afflictions, anger, jealousy, hatred, wrong view, ignorance, many of them. So we're talking about impurities here. If we can, there are certain obstacles in our mind which prevent us from being enlightened, prevent us from perceiving and experiencing everything as paradise. And if we can remove those impurities and obstacles, then we would see all objects in the universe in one moment, of the past, present, and future at once. And that's what Buddha is able to do. In addition, they're able to appear anywhere in existence simultaneously. So, Separ Jepa means completely finished. Separ means completely finished. Jepa means it does that. So this is the opening line of the 9th chapter, which is by Master Shantideva, by the way. Just to repeat it from, if you weren't here in the prior two courses, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Master Shantideva, who lived around 700 AD. Our commentary is by XII, one of his primary disciples. The commentary is called Entry Point for Children of Victorious Buddhas. XII lived in the 13 and 1400s, 1364 to 1432. So the definition is that object which is such that if you realize it directly, it allows you to finish off all of your impurities. That object which is such that if you realize it directly, it allows you to finish off all of your impurities. And so that object that's being referred to is emptiness. So there's an object which, if you can realize it or experience it, it will allow you to finish off all of your impurities. What do we say impurities were? Yeah, everything that bothers your mind and your heart. Every single last thing on any and every level which disturbs your heart and mind. We can't even begin to conceive what it would be like to have a heart and mind which is utterly undisturbed on any and every level. Right? To be completely happy without the slightest disturbance is something I think that probably most of us can't conceive of. Okay. So another word for emptiness is ultimate reality. You can only perceive it in a deep state of meditation. It isn't like you take a tab of LSD and all of a sudden you're tapped into a higher reality, right? It isn't like you have a really good day and your burrito hits you just right and you're watching the sunset and all of a sudden you got it. You know, that was it. I saw ultimate reality. Something like that. This is an experience of another reality, different than this reality, which is a mental event. It's not a visual event. It's not a sensory event. It's not an event associated with the senses of this body. It is an event that one experiences in a very deep state of meditation when one is withdrawn from these senses and the mind is communing with that reality directly. Okay? So when the mind has the communion or experience or perception of that highest highest, whatever you want to call it, level of reality, ultimate reality, emptiness, that experience is such that it will cause the end of all of your suffering forever. It will change you utterly and completely, such that you must come to the end of all your suffering in a very short period of time. So a very important and profound experience. So if we can make contact with that, then every impure thing about our body, every impure thing about our minds and our emotions will come to an end eventually. Not instantaneously, we'll talk about it. But it sets in motion that series of events. Okay? And it becomes totally impossible to have any unhappy thought or feeling ever again for all infinite time in the future. All right? So we have to try to do these things before we die. Generally the way it works, it's tied in with the 5 paths. We talked about it in prior classes. We prepare ourselves to experience emptiness. We experience emptiness. After we experience emptiness, then we use that realization to put an end to all of our mental afflictions and all of our physical afflictions, right? And it's a process of, once one has the experience of ultimate reality, one uses it and applies it, and it becomes the rocket fuel to radically change who we are and how we live and how we exist in this world and how we relate to this world and all the people in this world, such that we become very, very pure and very, very holy very, very quickly. And the result is attaining paradise, nirvana and enlightenment, right? We end up with a higher body, a higher mind, and ultimately this body transforms to light. So all of this is triggered by that experience, something like 20 minutes. Right? So the very body starts to change, the very world starts to change, our very reality starts to change. So it's like 20 minutes in the presence of this other reality undoes you as a suffering human being. It's like we have nuclear radiation as humans, right? Where if you're exposed to nuclear radiation, you're done, right? You're radiated and you deteriorate and die quickly. This is like the opposite of that, right? It's like some kind of positive, I don't want to call it radiation, but some positive exposure, where if you have this exposure, your being is radically altered, so that it gets better and better and better on every level, quickly over time, until you're utterly pure and completely holy and light, right? Something like that. I find it useful to think like that. So you become what's called a stream enterer. If you have a direct experience of emptiness or ultimate reality, you become what's called a stream enterer. They didn't have conveyor belts in ancient times. If they had conveyor belts, they would have said, you're on the conveyor belt. You're on the escalator up to the pearly gates or whatever. No. But the idea being that it's inexorable. Once one has an experience of ultimate reality, it is inexorable. It's like a twig floating in a stream, a fast-moving stream would be the metaphor of ancient times. Once you put something that floats in a fast-moving stream, it will float down the stream past it. It's inevitable. In our case, if you step on a conveyor belt and it's running, it's inevitable that you're being moved along. So this is the idea behind it. You become what's called a stream enterer. And you have a very, relatively speaking, a very short period of time until you attain your paradise and your enlightenment. So that's the quality of ultimate reality. Okay, that is the nature and quality of ultimate reality, and you have to make contact with that so that we receive our hit of exposure, which will radically change our being for the better, guaranteed. Right? Ending in our ultimate positive evolution, guaranteed. So it's like that. So what happens when you see emptiness directly? That's the first homework question. Please say jikta.
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 Jik means destruction and ta means view. It means the view of destruction. It's a way we look at the world. It's a way of looking at the world. What does the view of destruction focus upon? What is a view of destruction? I'll just tell you because it would take too long. The view of destruction focuses upon what's called me and mine. You hear this over and over and over again in Buddhism. Me and mine, me and mine, me and mine, me and mine. What is that all about?
Grasping at an inherently existing I.
Well, what is me and what is mine first? I mean, me is pretty obvious. It's me. Right?
See yourself as
Yeah, it's Paul, it's G, right?
Seeing yourself as independent.
Well, let's first define what me and mine are. That's me. What is mine?
It's identification.
What's mine?
Mine is
my car,
my parts,
my apartment,
place.
my arms, my clothes,
Ownership.
my girlfriend, my boyfriend. Yeah, anything that my mind calls important to me and mine, right? I mean, ultimately, in a core sense, we're talking about what Buddhism calls the 5 heaps, the bits that make me up, body and mind, skandhas, etc. But from an afflictive perspective, from a mental perspective, me and mine is just what it sounds like. Me and all my stuff, right? Whatever I happen to like, my car, my house, my big screen TV, whatever it is, right? My shoes, my purse, right? So all the things which our mind attaches to, all the things which our mind takes to be important, essentially, and says, want that, like that, I don't want that, I don't like that, right? And so this is where this view, so we have to first talk about the view of destruction, then we'll talk about me and mine. So when we focus on me and mine, we think they exist in a particular way, which is what Teddy was starting to say. Go away next time.
They exist independently.
Oh.
We think things exist independently,
Oh.
meaning that they're not dependent upon causes and conditions to exist.
Yeah, and ultimately from a Prasangika viewpoint, from our projections in our mind and our concepts. I mean, there are different views in Buddhism about the nature of dependence, the nature of reality, the nature of conventional reality-dependent origination. There are different schools in Buddhism that say, well, this is how you define what's there and what isn't there. But we're just going to stick with Prasangika here, the highest school of Buddhism. And basically what they would say is, look, we go through life thinking there's really something out there, independent of the way I think of it. There really is a glass of water here. Okay, it is a glass of water from its own side. It definitely exists as a glass of water, and that's all it is, and that's all it will ever be, and that's all it can be, is a glass of water. Buddhism says, wrong. It doesn't exist that way. It exists in dependence upon me conceiving of it as that. It exists in dependence upon me naming it as that. I mean, of course, it functions for me as a glass of water. I just take a drink. It takes care of my thirst. A glass of water doesn't drown me. It might drown a fly. To a fly, it's not, a glass of water. It's what kills them. The liquid that kills them. So Buddhism basically, very simply says, everything exists for us in dependence upon the way we mentally perceive it and conceptualize it and identify it and relate to it. So every being has a different set of senses. Every even human being has different perceptual process. It's anywhere from a slight difference in perception. I mean, we all have slight differences in perception about this. You see that side, or you see that side, or you see that side, or you think it tastes nice, or you don't like it, or you like it. There are all sorts of levels of perceptual difference about this stuff. All the way down to the fact that some beings think it isn't a glass of water, and some beings think it is a glass of water. The glass of water doesn't exist right here. The glass of water exists in here. The glass of water comes from in here. My senses take in data, my mind processes the data, my mind conceptualizes the data and says, oh, that's a glass of water. No problem. It functions. That is our normal conventional reality. That is not ultimate reality, and that's not how things truly exist. So, who cares about a glass of water? Well, not so important. But when we talk about me and mine, however, it becomes more of an issue, because then we say, that's my car, and they scratched it, and I'm going to have at it with them. That's my girlfriend, and they're flirting with her, and I'm going to scream at them or whatever. And so, because we think things exist definitively, concretely, out there from their own side, we react. We spend our lives behaving badly, by and large, because we think something really exists in a fixed way over there. And we don't think that it exists as a function of my perception. We don't think, I'm experiencing this in a particular way, I'm perceiving this in a particular way, I'm conceptualizing this in a particular way, I'm projecting this in a particular way, and that's how it exists for me. Right? which is more accurate and appropriate from a Buddhist perspective. So, back to the view of destruction. The view of destruction focuses on me and mine, me being self-existent and my things being self-existent. This arm is me, and it's mine, and it's right here, and it's hard, and it's fast, and it's definite, and it's concrete, and it's got nothing to do with my mind and my perceptions and the way in which my mind and my perceptions are functioning. So, excuse me. So, I think it exists independent of my perceptions. I think my arm exists independent of my conceptualization. And I think my stuff exists that way too. And I think everything else out there exists that way as well. So there are two interpretations why thinking this way and looking at things this way is called a view of destruction. One is, well, I'm going to be destroyed. I'm fixated on something which is going to be destroyed with wrong view. I have this wrong view, this ignorant view about destroyable stuff. My car is going to stop running in 5 or 10 years. My body's going to stop functioning in terms of worm food, dust, whatever. And I have this self-existent view that it's out there from its own side, and that's what it is, and it will always be that way, or it's concrete in some way, and I behave badly as a result. So the first reason it's called a view of destruction is because this ignorant view is focused upon something which is being destroyed moment by moment. That's the first reason why it's called a view of destruction. It's destroyable. So the second reason is that the view is destroyable. You can destroy this wrong view. The wrong view that says my girlfriend is pretty from her own side, and she's my boyfriend, whatever, and no one can look at them, and no one can steal them, and no one can flirt with them, and no one can go out to party with them, or I get angry and I'm going to scream at them or attack them or be jealous of them or be hurt or have whatever affliction might occur. Right? So we can remove that view and destroy that view. We can destroy the view that says things exist from their own side. This ignorant view that says I exist from my own side, the glass of water exists from its own side, can be removed. And that's another reason why it's called the view of destruction. It's the first link in the wheel of life. Wheel of life. Somewhere. There's a, hopefully out there, and two of them. We can put one in here. Can we put one in here?
I can do that. I have one.
Shit, I'm always referring to the wheel of life, but it's never here.
We'll stick it in that corner.
Yeah, that's great. So the first link in the wheel of life, which is explaining the causality of samsara and suffering existence, is two blind guys, two ignorant people being led along doing stupid, ignorant things, right? So ignorance causes suffering, and the ignorance which causes every suffering in our life, from the slightest little small inconvenience to the heaviest suffering of cancer and abuse and pain and suffering, all of those things come from ignorance. They're all caused by the wrong view. Every version of mental and physical suffering that we have is caused by this view of destruction. From the most important to the least important problem in our lives. Mainly it comes from our feelings. Mainly it's because of our feelings, right? We have our body and our mind and our feelings, however you want to define those things. But we largely live our lives and react to our feelings, right? I feel hurt, I feel happy, I feel unhappy, I feel attacked, I feel whatever, right? And because we feel that way, we react, right? I feel attacked, so I counterattack. I feel abused, so I shout back or fight back. Whatever it might be, right? They did this, so I feel jealous, and I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. So the reason this is empowering is that this is this classic ignorant liking and ignorant disliking, right? I like this and I want it. I don't like this, and so I want to avoid it. I want to avoid the people I hate. I want to be around the people I like. I want to be around the stuff that I like. I want to be around the food that I like. I want to be around the material objects that I like. I want to be around the bodies that I like. I don't want to be around the bodies that I don't like. I want to avoid the foods that I hate. I want to avoid the people that cause me agita or whatever. because we feel like this, and because we have ignorance, we collect negative karma. We behave badly. We behave non-virtuously. We hurt other beings, right? You know, it's like, look, there's roaches in my apartment. I kill them, they disappear. I don't like roaches. I feel disgusted by roaches. I feel but just one feels disgusted by roaches, right? I don't want roaches in my apartments. I'm going to kill the roaches in my apartments because they're disgusting and I don't want them to be around. There are roaches over there. They exist over there from their own side. If I squash them and sweep them up and throw them in the dustbin, they won't be around anymore. That's view of destruction. That view is ignorant, and that view is predicated upon the notion that there's something over there from its own side. It exists independent of my conceiving of it in a certain way. It exists without being dependent upon me projecting it and even creating it from my own past karma, right? And so because I have ignorance and because I don't want to be around the stuff that I don't like, I kill it. You know, I just engaged in killing and collected huge negativity, which is going to come back to me and ripen upon me as future suffering, right? And from a Buddhist perspective, you know, what we put out is what comes back to you. What you do is what you experience. So when we have to talk about it, but when we perceive ourselves smashing, in my case, you know, when I didn't know any better, moved into my first house in Atlanta, and I saw a couple of roaches, and I saw a couple of dozen roaches. Then I like woke up with them crawling on me in bed at night, you know, and I was like, there's one going right across my eyebrow, you know. It's like, I think it's time to do something. It's like, well, I'll just get some bombs, spray bombs, right? And, you know, set the spray bombs that went out for this Saturday afternoon and set off a dozen spray bombs throughout the house, and came back later and it's like, oh my God, there's thousands of them. And they're dead. This is going to take me so long to sweep them up, you know. This is what I worried about. I was like, Jesus, this is going to take so long to clean up. You know, just killed like 1,000 sentient beings, right? And I'm worried that it's like 10 minutes of extra inconvenience, right? Well, this is the least of my problems, right? In the future. So, I digress. The point here is that I collected huge negativity in doing this because of my ignorance. You know, Holy Ken Rinpoche, they used to have a huge problem in how with roaches, right? And he used to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and put them in a cup and take them outside nicely. You know, he did it for like a year. And then they never had any more roach problems. I mean, I remember when Geshe Michael used to say, like, he'd set stuff, like he'd take a cloth or something, he'd set something in the middle of it, you know. Oh yeah, dog food? Yeah, and you know, then you go at night and you just take the cloth and you pick it up and they're all in there and you take them outside and put them in a nice place outside. The same thing happened to me, even though I killed God knows how many roaches when I had my first house in Atlanta. When I finally moved to New York City and studying Dharma, I started to see roaches in my apartment. I was like, oh no, can't kill it. Now what? So I just like got good at catching roaches. So I was like, take the cup, put it over the roach, you know, slide the paper under it. Now what do I do with it? It's New York City. I can put it in somebody else's apartment? What karma is that? Right? You know, it's like just give it to somebody else instead. What? So finally I said, all right, I'll just take it to the trash chute. You know, take it over to the trash chute area. You know, always put them in there. I've never had roaches. You know, I lived in New York City for 20 years and I lived in multiple places. Never had a problem with roaches. So this is understanding true causality, you know, which is that if you want to get rid of something, if you have an enemy that you want to dispose of, love them and be kind to them, and they turn into a friend or they leave, you know, or they disappear in some way. You know, the best way to have an enemy is to treat them badly, and then you have more and more and more of it. If you want to have, you know, killing roaches is the best way to have roaches. So we live in ignorance and we do the opposite thing, which is to our benefit. So, because we think it exists over there, we don't understand the nature of how seeds are planted in our mind. Perceiving myself smash the roach causes my mind to function in a certain way. Perceiving myself smash 100 roaches or gas 1,000 roaches plants energies, karmic seeds in my mind, which will continue on indefinitely until they ripen and bring a result of me having horrible perceptions of myself being gassed or smashed or whatever the case might be. It's the nature of perception. It's the nature of karma. So we studied that in the course 5, the karma course, and I strongly encourage you to study it if you haven't already. So it's not our focus here, but important to understand that the act of perceiving oneself doing something places an imprint upon the mind stream. It causes the subtle mind, to function in a particular way. Why does our mind function the way it does? Why do we have certain thoughts? Why do we have difficulties with certain feelings? Why do we have difficulties with certain impulses? Where do they come from? Why are they there? They're not random. They don't exist for no reason. We put them there in the past. All of the impulses of our mind, all of the habits of our mind, all of the tendencies of our mind, all of the fears of our mind, all the misperceptions of our mind, we caused in the past. Our mind exists in its current state because of the way we configured it in the past, through our perception of ourselves. When we see ourselves screaming at someone, we are causing our mind to function in a particular way for the future. We are creating subtle energies in the mind and karmic seeds in the mind, which will ripen and which will cause the mind to function in a particular way. It will cause the mind to not like things. It will cause the mind to see things. It will cause the mind to perceive reality in a certain way. It will cause reality to exist for us in a certain way, because that's all the mind can perceive. Perception is reality. My perception is my reality. The fly's perception is the fly's reality. That's it. Perception is reality. And my perception is a function of my mind. Why does 90% of the data being transmitted through the nervous system never reach the brain to be processed? How does that happen? And what's being filtered out and why? And of the 10% of the data that's coming through my senses and through my nervous system that actually reaches the brain and can be formulated into a thought, why is it? Why are all these electrical impulses and the subtle movement of ions and cells, how are they related to thoughts arising? How do they cause thoughts to arise? It's not really the point of our class, but there's a connection between the mind and the brain. And thought arises and consciousness arises. And certain thoughts arise for a reason. The mind is functioning in a certain way. Therefore, certain perceptions must arise. Certain experiences must occur. Maybe it's depression. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's bliss. We will experience that which the mind causes us to experience. I don't have control over my mind to say, mind, I want you to experience this event as blissful, because I want you to. It doesn't work that way, does it? We have to configure the mind at a very subtle energetic level, karmic level, to function in a way which brings us happiness and joy and bliss and paradise, right? It's not an accident, it's not random, it's not finding the right door to travel over the rainbow to Asgard and be in paradise forever. It's a perceptual event, and we must create the causes to have the right perceptions, which go on forever. So, okay, so we have to stop our negative deeds, is the point. Every time we engage in negativity, every time we harm another living being, we're screwing ourselves over. We're fucking our mind up for the future, basically. Pardon me. So, we have to stop our bad thoughts forever. We have to stop thinking it's okay to kill something, because then it won't be around stuff I don't like. We have to stop thinking if I just shout at the guy or do what's expedient, he'll leave me alone and my life will be better. Wrong view. Source of suffering. We have to turn that around. It has to be, how can I treat this person very well so that I will always be treated very well? How can I always protect other beings so that I will always be protected? How can I create these perceptual events in my mind so that my mind only functions to perceive things in the best possible way for my reality? Okay, so Please say Nyangde.
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 So when we stop all our bad thoughts, when we stop having any kind of bad thought or negative thought, what are we left with?
The absence of negative thoughts.
Nyangde. No mental afflictions. Nyangde is nirvana. Means overcoming your grief. No mental afflictions. It's the Tibetan word for nirvana. So what's the connection between Jikta and Nyangde? What's the connection between this view of destruction and nirvana? So what is nirvana? Nirvana is a state where you have absolutely no mental afflictions. Nothing ever bothers you in the slightest bit ever again on any level, way, shape, or form. You never have an unpleasant feeling. You never have an unpleasant thought. You never have an unpleasant bodily experience. Everything is just absolutely fantastic. Not bad, right? We'll take it. Hard. I mean, I can't imagine it personally. I mean, can you think of a day where you've ever had a day where everything was great all day long? Cool. I'll take it. I want to hang out with you. We're very virtuous. I bow down to
Well, it's one thing to have a day where you experience a lot of sensory pleasure and then you identify with it, which...
I'll take it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, but in Buddhism, that's actually just, it is suffering.
Well, the end of it is suffering.
Identifying with temporary pleasure is just sophisticated suffering.
Well, I mean, I think you have to split it. I think you have to say, look, the point of Buddhism is to be happy, right? To be ultimately blissed out happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, to benefit all of it. So, depending whether you're after nirvana or full enlightenment, right? So, if we collect virtue in the past, it will ripen into positive experiences in the present, right? And that's not bad. That's not. It is a Buddhist goal to be virtuous, to have the results of virtue. It is the Buddhist goal to have, ultimate happiness and ultimate paradise, whether it be, nirvana or enlightenment. So that is our goal. Our goal is to not have any problems and to be happy and blissed out all the time. Or you could say, well, it's selfish to want that for yourself, in which case you're on the Mahayana track and not on the Hinayana track. It's okay. But, Hinayanists want to be in nirvana all the time. They just want to be blissed out in nirvana all the time. That's what they want. Nothing wrong with that. That's the goal of the Hinayana practitioners in Buddhism. And, if one makes it to a Mahayana motivation, then there's the sense of, well, I've got to be happy so I can bring everybody else to happiness. I've got to be enlightened so I can bring everybody else to the end of their suffering. So I don't think one can be a Buddhist really and say happiness is a bad thing, or there's something wrong with happiness, or there's something detrimental about happiness. I mean, obviously you could grasp to it and engage in negativity to try to perpetuate it, but that's a different thing. Like happiness and goodness itself, all for it in Buddhism. Engaging in negativity around it, well, no. What are we talking about? Nirvana.
And the link between
The
that.
relationship between Jikta and
Okay. So, so this idea of wrong view, the idea that the roach exists outside of my own mind, the idea that my aversion to the roach exists outside of my own mind, that's wrong view. That's view of destruction, right? And when I stop thinking that way, I can move towards nirvana. When I stop thinking the roach exists out there, and it's separate from me, and it's got nothing to do with me, and it's totally fine to smash a lot of them because they're irrelevant to my life, and that's how I get rid of them, right? As long as we have that wrong view, that view of destruction, we're collecting negative karma, and we will suffer intensely. When we destroy that view, when we're able to change that wrong view and eliminate that view and destroy that view, then we have a basis to think with wisdom about things and say, I've got roaches in my apartment because of what I did in the past, and now I need to behave in a virtuous and good and appropriate way towards these sentient beings so that to help protect them and give them a nice place to live and all the rest, so that they can be happy and I can be happy. And all the rest, right? So that's the relationship between the two. We have to understand that the view of destruction is is pervaded by ignorance, and when we get rid of the ignorance, we can move towards an attainment nirvana. That's the relationship between the two. Okay, how do you get money? You give it away. You know, how do you get rid of your roaches? You protect them. Okay, so as we do that more and more, our world cleans up. As we engage in virtuous living and correct view, life gets better and better. Things improve, and life becomes holier and holier. Right? Life becomes sweeter and sweeter, and we move closer and closer to nirvana and to enlightenment. Right? The goal of Buddhism is not to feel calm as we die. It's not to put on a happy face. You know, when you're in the cancer ward and you say, I'm a good Buddhist and I have cancer and I have equanimity while I die of cancer and a horrible death. It's not the goal of Buddhism. The goal of Buddhism is to be ultimately happy all the time. You know, intensely, massively, ultimately, you know, happy in paradise, nirvana all the time. That is the goal of Buddhism. And so we want to collect those causes and experience those results over and over and over again until it becomes a continuous experience. And so ignorance interferes with that, because we're not collecting the causes for our own happiness and other beings' happiness. We're collecting the causes for suffering instead. Okay? So that's the connection. That's a homework question. All right. So how do we get rid of the view of destruction? See emptiness. Perceive emptiness directly. Okay? And then we can really clean up our mind and our body, and we won't suffer anymore. And then you clean up your reality. So there's a custom in Tibetan Buddhism in the monasteries. Often there'll be many monks in a debate or in a lecture hall, and a lot of them have no idea what's going on. I mean, they're just clueless. You know, maybe they'll be having some deep, profound philosophical debate. You know, maybe half the monks there have no clue what's being said. But there's a tradition to just sit there and stay there and listen and take the blessing, consider it as a blessing. And you know, over time, it starts to become clear. You know, a year later, 2 years later, then they know it. You know, so there's a profound class that may be going on, and a lot of people who are there have no clue about what's being said. Everything is just foreign, makes no sense, and they just stay. They sit there and they think of it as a blessing, and they ask for the blessing, and as a result, it begins to sink in. You know? And it's like that. It's like that with this material on the 9th chapter on emptiness. So don't get discouraged. It's very deep and very profound. And it's very powerful. So if it does become difficult at a certain point, if it does stop making sense at a certain point, let me know if it's me. But if it's not me, then just sit there and take it in as a blessing. Okay? All right. It's very powerful. So people in Tibet at the time of Master Shantideva said, look, you don't have to see emptiness to get to nirvana. You don't have to experience ultimate reality to achieve nirvana. You can get to nirvana just fine, thank you very much, without this ultimate reality thing. Okay? So Master Shantideva starts to go into that. What's the difference between nirvana and Buddhahood? What does the Buddha have that nirvana doesn't have?
Omniscience.
Omniscience.
Enlightenment.
But what's the difference between full enlightenment and
You don't
nirvana?
have to be enlightened to reach nirvana. Nirvana is losing your mental affliction.
Yeah, nirvana you're blissed out personally. Right? But what's a Buddha got that someone in nirvana doesn't have?
Bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta, or the love for all sentient beings, and the deep love and intention that they not suffer anymore, that they all have their own paradises. Right? So they have omniscience, the ability to see all things with past, present, and future simultaneously in a single instant. And they have the ability to emanate anywhere, instantaneously on any realm, any planet, any place. Right? So that's the difference between a Buddha who's fully enlightened and a being which is in nirvana. And nirvana is a personal nirvana, right, where you stop all of your negative emotions. But Master Shantideva is saying, look, both nirvana and Buddhahood require a step there before you can get to nirvana. They say you're not going to get to nirvana, and you're not going to get to full enlightenment without seeing emptiness. It's a prerequisite. It's a necessary step prior to attaining nirvana, right? And So we have to make that contact with ultimate reality. But in Gyaltsabje's time, people said, no, you don't have to. You don't have to see emptiness directly to attain nirvana or to become fully enlightened. So Gyaltsabje said, look, come on. You need the power of having the experience of ultimate reality to permanently put an end to your anger and your jealousy and all of your other afflictions. It's impossible to permanently put an end to your problems without experiencing ultimate reality. Right? So, we've just gone through an entire book, 8 chapters. We spent the entire year on this material, Master Shantideva Gyaltsabje saying, oh, if you feel anger, try this. If you feel jealousy, try that. Here's a meditation you can use. Here's a technique. Look down. Try to reduce your stimulation. We've gone through a year of methods of working with our mental afflictions, right, throughout the guide. And now here Gyaltsabje is saying, well, it doesn't really work. The only thing that works to permanently end your afflictions is perceiving emptiness. Right? The other methods and techniques taught in the first 8 chapters of the guide do help reduce those afflictions. Those methods and techniques and meditations and skills which were taught in the first 8 chapters of the guide are very powerful techniques to reduce your afflictions, but they cannot permanently eliminate them. They cannot end them forever. Okay? And so Gyaltsabje and Master Shantideva are very clear on this point. All right? And it says you cannot remove your anger and your other negative emotions permanently, which is what nirvana is, unless you see emptiness. Right? So the next lines in the 9th chapter. I think let's take a break here. Are there snacks?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to go into the next lines in the 9th chapter where they go into this a little more. But I think good to have a break at this point. Have some snacks. Dive a little deeper. Any questions before? Yeah, please.
So,